In this video, I'm going to be talking about the cost to frame your custom home. I'm going to share where you can save some money, what's going to cost you more, and why that is. This is all part of a series that we're doing on how much does it cost to build a custom home. And if you want to see the last video comparing ICF foundations to your typical foundation, you can check out that video here. Now, first I want to talk about lumber as a commodity. Lumber as a commodity is generally measured in board feet. A board foot would be a 12 inch by 12 inch by 1 inch piece of lumber. And now lumber is traded on the stock market and can be used as an indicator for whether or not construction costs are up or down where wood framing is used. And as of March 14th, it is trading at $414 US. You can see on this chart how significant an effect the pandemic had on lumber costs, with a peak of $1,481 in May of 2021, a significantly higher price than what it is today. Now, the website Home Designers explains that 6.3 board feet are required for every square foot of house. So a 1,000 square foot home would need 6,300 board feet to complete. Now, according to the Census Bureau, the average American home built in 2013 was 2,600 square feet, and it would have required 16,380 board feet to build. So that would be the equivalent of almost 22 mature pine trees. Now, you also need to keep in mind that you cannot use these numbers as the estimate for the lumber on your home. These are the commodity prices, right? There's a lot of work that needs to happen from getting that lumber from the tree, that pine tree we talked about, to the 2x4 or the 2x6 that you need in your house. So the price for the actual lumber for your home is going to be significantly more than the numbers that we're talking. This was just an example to show you how much it can fluctuate. Now, other things that are going to affect the cost of framing your building are going to be where you're building, the weather of when you're building, and the complexity of that building. Now, where you're building and the complexity of that building is also going to affect the material costs as well. So these are all things that you need to factor in, and we're going to get into some more details right now. So one way that you could save money on framing would be through advanced framing. Advanced framing, also known as optimum value engineering, OVE, is a system of construction framing techniques designed to optimize material usage and increase energy efficiency of your building. So this would be your 2x6 wood framing studs spaced at 24 inches on center instead of 16 inches on center. You would have a single top plate instead of a double top plate. You would have a 2-stud corner instead. You'd have minimal jack posts and minimal cripple studs and single headers where possible. Now, although in theory this sounds fantastic, a lot of architects are not designing with this in mind, because this is something that you need to apply at the design stage. It's not something you can add to a building after very easily. The other thing that it does is it limits the design that you can do. For example, people like great rooms. They like tall walls with lots of light. Tall walls cannot be built at 2 foot on centers. Typically, like for example, we've gotten into some homes where we're building 15, 16 foot walls, and that means we're doing 2x6 studs at 12 inches on center, plus we need the double top plate, plus we need additional blocking. So we're actually adding more lumber to that wall in order to give the client the feature that they want. So more lumber, which is more materials in general for a taller wall. It's harder to frame, so there's more labor as well. And it may even require some machines, because we're not going to be able to frame a 16-foot wall and stand it up with a couple people like we can with an 8-foot wall. In addition to the extra lumber needed for this tall wall, the lumber also becomes more costly. So currently in our region, a 2x6x8 is selling for $7.68. But a 2x6x10 is selling for $12.78. So you're increasing your wall height by 20% in this example if we're just going from 8 feet to 10 feet, but you're increasing the price of your studs by 40%. Plus you're adding your blocking in there, so everything is continuing to go up. more labor, more materials required, and more expensive materials. So this is outside of framing, but I do want to make this point as well, because by increasing the wall height of your building, you're also increasing the volume, which is going to affect how much insulation you might need, or the value of the insulation, I should say, that you might need. It's going to affect the HVAC size if you're adding more volume, right? Because all of that gets factored into how your house performed. It's also going to be more siding, more drywall, more painting, harder to work with, right? On an 8-foot wall, it's easier to paint, it's easier to drywall versus a 10-foot wall. So these are all things that are not only going to increase the cost of framing, but are also going to increase other aspects of your construction. Now you might be thinking that, oh, well, I want an open concept home, so that must save me some money. Well, not necessarily, because what's required for an open concept home usually means larger floor joists if you're trying to carry that over a larger span, larger beams, or beams that maybe would not have been in place if they were sitting on top of a wall, and that comes with also posts. So we could be getting into steel work on some of these homes, some of these big open concept spaces that we do. The other thing that open concept does is it makes it very difficult to run HVAC, which means we have to get creative, and which also means that we now have to frame bulkheads and try and work that into the design somehow. So all these things actually add more labor than just building a simple interior wall. Another thing that could affect the cost of framing would be what sheathing do you use? Do you use OSB? Do you use plywood? Do you use zip sheathing? All of those will have a big effect on pricing depending on the size of your home. We did do a separate video on that. If you want to watch that, you can check that out. Now, roof is a big ticket item as part of the framing. I'm not going to go through all the different roof styles, but I'll share some common ones that we come across here. You have your shed roof, which is very simple and great for clear story windows, but does add those tall walls into the design that I already talked about earlier. The gable roof is also very simple, but it has some more complicated offshoots that include the clipped gable roof and Dutch gable roof. Then we get into a hip roof, which we see often today, but we also come across the gambrel roof and the mansard roof on older buildings. So less on newer buildings, but it is something we deal with on renovations on the older buildings. Finally, there is the flat roof that is often used when height restrictions are at play and people want to get as much living space as possible. And we see these often in infill situations. Going back to the sloped roof options, the steeper the roof, the more expensive it is. Because what happens when you have a steeper roof is that it's a lot more difficult to work on, and the area required for that roof, both on framing and covering that roof, becomes larger. Now, if you're concerned about solar panels on your roof, ideally you're putting that from 30 to 45%, which would actually give you a 7/12 roof to a 12/12 roof, which is not something we do very often because it gets quite expensive and hard to work on, but that would be the ideal one. So solar panels are something that you can consider throughout the design, but they do work on a lower slope roof as well. You just won't get as much production out of them. So that's something that you'll have to figure out if it is an important factor for you. But to give you an idea of the difference from going from a 7/12 roof to a 12/12 roof, that's actually a 20% increase in the surface area for that roof. So that could actually give you, well, it's 20% more materials. And like I said, the steeper the roof, the more the labor it will cost you as well. Now, if you're getting into building something like a certified passive house, you're going to want to look into some other framing methods if you need to have a high level of insulation. The Larson truss is something that you might want to look into. A Larson truss is a type of lightweight non-structural double stud wall assembly that allows for thicker insulation. It's really ideal for dense packed cellulose insulation wall systems and a very high R-value building envelope without many problems associated with a double stud wall construction. Now, this is not something that we've done here. I'm not 100% sold on it. That doesn't mean it's not correct. It's just the designs that we've worked with and the levels that we've had to hit for our homes didn't necessarily make sense for us to do the Larson truss method with the dense packed cellulose within it. So make sure if you're going for this option that you're talking to your builder, you're talking to your architect, you're talking to your energy advisor, you're looking at all of the options and figuring out the best one for you and your design. Now I want to jump back to solar just for a quick second here. If you live in the US and you own your home, I have a great opportunity for you. You're likely aware, maybe you're not, that the electricity costs have gone up by 20% on average over the last 10 years across the US, and there's never been a better time to go solar because of these price increases and because of the tax incentives and the fact that the cost of solar has gone down by about 50% over the last 10 years. So if you're interested in seeing if your home qualifies, you can go to thecontrastbuilder.com/solar. If you're concerned about upfront costs, don't worry, there are great financing opportunities for you where you can get solar on your home, reduce your bill, your monthly payment, and pay no money down. So once again, if you're interested in seeing if your home qualifies, head to thecontrastbuilder.com/solar. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. Be sure to like it and comment below if this has been helpful, or if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, I'm Casey Gray, and remember to live consciously.